In this new video series, I'll be giving a high-level overview of China's culinary history and touch upon some of the more interesting aspects in detail. For this video, I'll be talking about meat. The ancient Chinese ate many kinds of meat, and very early on, the most common types of meat that they ate were already very recognizable to most modern humans. For example, in the Book of Rites, it is written that during the Zhou dynasty, a period stretching from the 10th century BCE to the 2nd century BCE, only the king is allowed to eat the sacrificial great Lao meat. Lao just means enclosure, and the great Lao meat is basically beef. The nobles, on the other hand, were allowed to eat the lesser Lao meats, which include only mutton and pork. As the power of the monarchy weakened over time, the highest-ranking nobles, the zhuhous, also gained the right to eat beef. In the 4th century BCE book, The Discourse of the States, it mentions that the zhuhous are also allowed to eat beef. The qing, the next highest ranked officials, are allowed to eat mutton. The dafu, who are middle-ranked officials, are allowed to eat pork. And the shi, the lowest ranked officials, are allowed to eat fish. Commoners are only allowed to eat vegetables. So back then, even meats are ranked by status levels. Beef is greater than mutton, which is greater than pork, which is greater than fish. We can see that even back then, people were already eating the same kinds of meat that many of us love today. And of course, the strict restrictions of food for different classes back during the feudal Zhou dynasty went away eventually, and people after that could for the most part enjoy different kinds of meat as long as they could afford it. The sole restricted meat is beef, which I will explain why in the next video. However, while the consumption of different meats was less restricted later on, the status ranking of the different meats remained the same for a very long time. Let's go through the history of each meat, starting from the lowest ranked fish to the highest ranked beef according to the Zhou dynasty ranking. While fish was initially ranked lowly during the Zhou dynasty, it didn't mean that people did not enjoy it. Throughout Chinese history, poets, authors, philosophers, and many others have commented on people enjoying fish. For example, in the famous poem Fisherman on the River by the Song dynasty poet Fan Zhongyan, it reads, "People coming and going by the river, only enjoying the delicious bass, but only you look at the leaf-like boat, appearing and disappearing in the waves." This poem refers to people only focusing on the enjoyment of eating fish, while forgetting about the fisherman who made it possible. And this poem is amongst many that refers to the deliciousness of fish. So how did people in the past eat fish? Well, first of all, the 11th to the 13th century CE was a pivotal and tumultuous period in China's history, where it initially saw a flourishing of Chinese culture and culinary techniques during the Song dynasty. But later on, the rise of the Mongols eventually led to the conquest of China by the Mongols. There were major changes in Chinese culture, language, politics, architecture, and food before and after this period. During and after the Song dynasty, Chinese cooking evolved to become the Chinese cuisine that we are familiar with today. For example, even the quintessential Chinese cooking technique, the stir-fry, was invented only during the Song dynasty, as it was only until the Song dynasty that Chinese people had the capability to produce enough iron at low enough cost to mass-produce common household items made of iron, such as the kinds of wok that we have today. Before that, food can be quite different. Before the Song dynasty, there were a few main ways to eat fish. Two main ways are essentially encapsulated by the common Chinese proverb, 脍炙人口, which figuratively means a piece of work that receives praise all around. But the literal translation of 脍炙人口 is that the foods of kuai and zhi are enjoyed by everyone. So what exactly are kuai and zhi? Well, let's start with zhi. Zhi is basically roast meat. Even the character is self-explanatory, with the meat radical at the top and a fire radical at the bottom. And the way people liked to eat fish back then was to roast it. An interesting event in history involving zhi fish is the story of the assassination of the king of Wu in 515 BCE. In order to kill the king, the assassin hid the dagger inside a zhi fish, and upon presenting the fish to the king, He took out the dagger and stabbed the king of Wu. While Chinese people today don't normally use the term zhi, roasted fish and other meats are very common in Chinese cuisine. Kwai, on the other hand, is sliced raw meat and quite alien to Chinese cuisine today. However, raw meat was an extremely popular food in China for the longest time, and even Confucius himself was a great fan of kwai. In the 4th century BCE book, the Analects, Confucius mentioned that food should be fine and kwai should be thinly sliced. He also mentioned not to eat it without the right condiments. So what are the right condiments? In the Book of Rites, it is stated that kwai should be eaten with spring onions in spring and with mustard in autumn. And while Chinese people initially used all kinds of meat to prepare kwai, after the Han Dynasty, except for fish, other kinds of meat became uncommon and kwai became increasingly associated with raw fish. Kwai is so popular that this dish kept popping up in poems throughout the ages, such as Tang Dynasty poet Wang Wei's The Ballad of a Lady in Luoyang with the line, "The serving girl's golden plate of cup kwai." But if kwai was so popular, when and why did it disappear from Chinese cuisine? The primary reason was because Chinese people over the ages became increasingly wary of eating raw fish, as they knew it was unsafe. Very early on, they realized that eating raw fish could cause parasites to grow in the body. For example, in the 2nd century CE medical book, 金匮要略, written by the Chinese pharmacologist Zhang Zhongjing, it mentions that eating kwai and drinking fermented milk products will cause parasites to grow in the abdomen, leading to an illness called nue. The reason why raw fish was unsafe for them was because for most of China's history, much of its population lived in cities that are very deep inland and very far away from the sea. The fish that they mostly had access to was freshwater fish, which tended to have a lot more harmful parasites than saltwater fish living in the sea. Remember that in Wang Wei's poem earlier, it mentions the serving girl's golden plate of cup kwai. Here, the kwai was made from carp, which is a freshwater fish. And while the Chinese people knew it was a health risk for a long time, it was not until the Song Dynasty that many started to take it much more seriously and raise awareness about the dangers of eating raw fish and raw meat. Despite the increased awareness, many were still reluctant to abandon one of their favorite foods, and Chinese people took a few hundred years more to finally stop eating raw fish. The ancient Chinese solution to the parasite problem was to try to eat it with spicy condiments like mustard to detoxify the fish. Chinese mustard is made from brown mustard seeds, which gives a very strong spicy kick to the nasal passages when consumed. For example, the famous 12th century Confucian philosopher Zhu Xi warned people that if they don't have mustard paste, they should avoid eating kwai, otherwise it could cause harm to the body. A while later, in the early Ming Dynasty, Chinese people also began eating kwai with vinegar, perhaps because of the taste, as well as an attempt to make it safer. Of course, we know today that mustard and other spicy foods do not kill parasites effectively, and thus by the late Ming Dynasty in the 16th century, the practice of eating raw fish had almost completely died out in China. Today, the remaining remnants of the culture of eating kwai in China is found only in some of the coastal regions of China, such as the Teochew region, and is renamed Yusheng, which simply means raw fish. And finally, the third main way that the ancients loved to eat fish is to preserve them. In the past, the ancient Chinese had a lot of interactions with the Baiyue tribes from the southern regions, which is now situated in southern China and Southeast Asia. And one of the things they picked up from these interactions was how to preserve and ferment raw fish using rice and salt. The Chinese called this pungent fermented fish zha or qi, with the term zha being used much more frequently. And despite being of foreign origin initially, it soon became extremely popular amongst the Chinese. For example, in the 4th century book Researches into Lost Records by Taoist scholar Wang Jia, it records on one occasion that after seeing a big water creature being caught, the Emperor Han Zhaodi of the Han Dynasty ordered his officials to turn it into zha as it tastes delicious. One of China's greatest gastronomes, the Song Dynasty writer Su Dongpo, also mentioned in his writings that the people living in the Jiangnan region of China love to eat a dish called pan yu fan, which is a rice dish that mixes 炸, 快, 炙, and 朴. I've explained what are 炸, 快, and 炙 earlier. The last ingredient, 朴, is a type of cured meat or vegetable which I will explain in more detail in the subsequent meat videos, as 朴 is a technique used to preserve other meats instead of fish. I'll end this video by summarizing a method in which people living in the Northern Wei dynasty used to prepare 炸 as recorded in the 6th century agricultural manual, 齐民要术. First, cut raw carp fish into slices. Then apply salt to the fish. Next, press the fish to squeeze the water out. Lay the fish in a container. Add short grain rice. The rice is mixed with a spice called 猪鱼, mandarin orange skin, and wine. Alternate adding fish and rice in layers. Seal the container once full. Once white juice flows out and it tastes sour, the 炸 is mature. Use hands to separate the rice from the fish and not with a knife. Thank you for watching this video on Chinese food. In the next video, I will talk more about the other kinds of meat and their role in Chinese cuisine in the past. If you like this video, please press like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.